Hello, algebra students. Welcome to chapter 1, section 6. Okay, we're going to talk about relations, and a relation is where we're looking at the relationship between our x and our y. So I want you to look at this, and I want you to kind of pause the video and look at these different charts, like look at this chart, and look at this chart, and look at this chart, and tell me, how are my x and my y related? There are more than one relations. I'm going to share one of them and go from there. But you may see different relations than what I saw. Okay? And then we'll talk about the definition of a relation. So right now, just pause the video and look at those and see what you notice about the numbers and how they change and things like that. Okay, so maybe on that first one, you noticed that this table was about shape and then the number of sides. And on the second one, it was about shape and the number of vowels that were in the word. So U, A, and E. Okay, that was a tough one. But how did the Y relate to the X? How did this Y relate to the X? Okay. So that last one, think about that now that you know those two and see if you can see what the relation is. I'm hoping that you said that the y was the square of the x. So the x was our number and the y was our y squared. Okay, relation, Okay, sorry about that. My charger was dying. So let's talk about relations. So the relationship between the x and the y variable, or the independent and dependent variable, is what a relation is. And we use set notation to list our ordered pairs in braces. And this is what braces look like. These squiggly brackets is what I call them. So these squiggly brackets is what we're looking at, okay? So think about relationships. I just want you to brainstorm and write in your notes a few different kinds of relationships in your life, and then explain how those interact differently and how those are represented in your life and things like that. So in this page, I just want you to have some writing down. Obviously, I'm not going to take away or add points to your notes, but just think about that because it will help the rest of the lesson make more sense. So pause the video and do that. And now, let's talk about how we can show relationships in math. So we have 4 different ways that we can do that. So we can do it by a T-graph or a table, a mapping, a graphing, or what's called the domain and range. So we are looking at this relation or this set of numbers or set of ordered pairs. We know it's a set because it's in a squiggly brackets, okay? And we're going to look at this. So when we're doing a table, we know that this -2 is the x value and this 4 is the y value. So I would just list my ordered pairs in the appropriate spot. So -2, 4, -1, 4, 0, 6, and 1, 8, and 2, 8. Okay, so that's a table. It's simply putting the ordered pair into columns for x and y. Okay, now this is called a mapping. And a mapping is a little bit different because here, look, we have 2 4s and we have 2 8s. So here we don't add any repeats. So we don't add any repeats at all in our mapping. We have our x values because those are our x values. And then for our y values, we simply write down the y value that's repeated, and then this one's not, and then this one is. But the way that I show my mapping is by drawing some arrows to that. So -2 goes to 4, -1 goes to 4. 0 goes to 6, 1 goes to 8, and 2 goes to 8. Okay? One other thing I want to note is that this column here is my domain, and this column here is my range. Okay, so if you would label this domain and label this range, that will make more sense in a little bit when I explain this area over here. Okay, so what about graphing? These are each ordered pairs. So since they're ordered pairs, I can graph them. So I would like you to do so. You know how to graph. This is my X, this is my Y. Graph this point, graph this point, graph this point, graph this point, graph this point. Don't connect them at all, simply put them on the graph, okay? So when we are talking about domain and range, we're really looking at what the independent and dependent variable are. And we look at our domain is our input numbers, so our X values. And our Y values depend on our X values. So our domain is just the set of numbers. So squiggly bracket, list all your X values. If there are any repeats, don't list the repeat. Your range, squiggly bracket, list all your Y values. Again, don't list repeats, and then end your squiggly bracket. Okay? Now, as you are looking at that, we're looking at independent and dependent variables, and we're looking at relationships, and our relationships depend on certain things, right? So an independent variable is the variable that just stands alone or just happens, and it's not something that we can change. Where the dependent variable is something we can change, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So some examples of an independent variable might be number of tickets that you've purchased for an event, or the amount of time that you're doing something, or the number of hours that you worked. So as you are looking at and deciding what's an independent variable, what's a dependent variable, those are the kinds of things you're looking at, the things that just happen and stand alone. So what about a dependent variable? A dependent variable is a variable that changes. It either increases or decreases, okay? So if we look at that ticket example, the total cost of tickets is going to go up depending on how many tickets we buy. If we buy 5 tickets, it's going to be one price, but if we buy 10 tickets, it's going to be a higher amount, or it might go down depending on how many tickets we buy, okay? So total cost of tickets would be our dependent variable. Number of sit-ups. If we're doing the number of sit-ups over 5 minutes, the number of sit-ups over 5 minutes is going to be much lower than the number of sit-ups we do over 10 minutes, unless you're really, really out of shape and you stop at 5 minutes because your gut's gonna, gut hurts too much. Okay. And then the last example with hours worked would be your wages earned. So if you work more hours, you make more money. All right. So that is independent and dependent. So in your assignment, in your notes, you're going to decide, is something independent or dependent? So let's look at this example. Jamie went on a bike ride. The longer she rode her bike in minutes, one of your variables, the farther she got from home. So your variables are minutes and distance. So which is which? Which one's independent and which one's dependent? I'm hoping that you wrote down the minutes riding was your independent, and therefore the distance she got away from home would be your dependent variable. What about this one? The number of calories you burn increases as the number of minutes you walk increases. So my independent variable is minutes exercised. My dependent variable is calories burned. And so we're all set. That's our notes. Be ready for your worksheet, and we'll go from there. Have a great day. God bless.